Hello and welcome to the Thanksgiving NFL DFS Slate Breakdown. I'm your host, Tyler Weeman, at FlatTyler83 on your DFS sites and Twitter. Now, before we get into the Thanksgiving slate, come join us at LineStar. It is only $39.99 per month. Gets you access to all we do, all the props, all the DFS. You get it all, one low price. Now, let's get into the old slate and see what we got here. So, let's click on the teams tab here. So, I'll zoom in on this one for us all. All right, so we got 3 games as normal on good old Turkey Day. The Detroit Lions have the highest implied total at 29.3, followed by Green Bay and Miami. Green Bay 25.3, Miami 21.8, then Dallas at 20.8. Chicago 19.8, and the Giants at 16.8. So, the quickest game of these 3, pace-wise, should actually be Dallas and the Giants. And I actually think it is a little bit of an interesting game, even though you have 2 backup quarterbacks. I think there's definitely some angles to attack that game with. Now, let's get into the slate as a whole here. All right, starting with the quarterback position, we have, let me get this all situated. All right, starting with quarterback, our high owned on FanDuel is Tommy DeVito, 30% owned. He's 6,700. Look, he's super cheap. He had 11 versus Tampa Bay last week. Now he's versus this Dallas D, who is kind of been a little Jekyll and Hyde all year, but at least he does have some rushing upside. Personally, I'm not really loving DeVito in this spot. I understand that people are going to want to go there, but I think there's other ones. He does have the best team defense matchup with the Cowboys being 32nd versus quarterback over the last 5. But a reminder, that's without Micah Parsons, and he's back. He should make that defense a little bit better as a whole, but they are 31st over the last 10 also. So that defense has been hurting a bit, but they also got cornerback Bland back last week and had a little bit of a game with that. Next, we got Jordan Love, 7,500, 25% owned. I personally don't love Jordan Love in this spot. Weather-wise, it's going to be cold in Green Bay. I think it's like mid-20s temps or something like that, but light winds, light chance of any precipitation. All in all, to me, it is the situation that it's just a low volume passing attack. He's averaging 31 attempts per game. Now you put in, a cold weather game and all that, and I just have a very hard time seeing him get to, say, 35 plus pass attempts, let alone just 30. So for that reason, I have some trouble going here. The other aspect is it's going to be really hard to figure out who to stack him with. Now, Romeo Doubs did not practice today, so if he's out, that does open a lot for the Packers, and maybe I'll be a little more interested because then you got like cheap guys like Wicks that are going to be there. They have been very good from a target standpoint when they get played. So that would open some things up. But all in all, I just don't love a low volume passing attack. Next, we got Jared Goff, 8,200, 20% owned. Once again, it's another low volume passing attack situation. They do have the biggest implied total. So we have seen this year that we do need to take that into consideration. But the Chicago D has been very, very tough against the pass. The most likely outcome for the Lions, and it's also the path of least resistance, is running the ball. We know this Lions team wants to run the ball. They want to get a lead and run it down their throats. It's also a divisional game. So I would expect them to keep to that game plan a little bit more than they would against a game that's, not a divisional opponent just because it doesn't mean as much. They can mess around a little bit more, but I think this game, I don't think Jordan Love or Jared Goff is the way to go, because most likely the Lions are going to run the ball down the Bears' throats. That is their path of least resistance, and it's also what they want to do week in and week out. So for that reason, I'm not really loving Jared Goff either. Next, my two pivots that I like so far are Tua and Caleb Williams. But let's start with Tua. He's been playing really good football the last couple weeks, so I don't mind going back to him. He's also popping a little bit on our team defense tool over the last 5 games. Green Bay 20th versus quarterback. So some of the tools are liking him as well. It's the second highest game total. Also should stay a little bit closer. So there is a little bit more of a shootout possibility here, but all in all, I think most people expect the Packers to come out and beat the Dolphins handedly. But Dolphins have won 3 straight. Beat the Rams, beat the Raiders, beat the Patriots. 2 of those aren't great teams, but the Rams are solid, and the Rams were getting healthy at that time too. I think this team can win the game, and with it being on the road, I would expect the ball to be in Tua's hands a little bit, and he just has a lot of playmakers. My worry here is that, he is a Hawaii boy, played in the South, now playing in further south in Miami, and expected to go to Green Bay where it's going to be super cold. And I believe he has gone winless in cold games in his career. So there are definitely some factors that we don't love, but Jair Alexander may be out for the Packers, and that definitely hurts their defense as a whole. I am interested in Tua, especially if he's going low owned. Next, we got Caleb Williams, 7,200. Look, he's pretty much the price as Cooper Rush and Tommy DeVito, but he has the most rushing upside of any of the quarterbacks on this slate. Other thing, Lions are likely going to be up and handedly winning this game. And with that, I think he is going to have the most volume. He threw 47 pass attempts versus Minnesota, 31 the game before that. He is throwing the ball, and I expect that to continue. But the big thing is that he has that rushing upside. He's averaging 30 yards rushing a game, but has, 70 a couple games ago. He has games of 56 rushing yards. And you give me 4 or 5 extra points when I don't really love any of the quarterbacks on this slate, and it's pretty interesting. I think there's a decent floor here, but also a ceiling. And what we've seen with the new offensive coordinators, it's kind of started to unlock some of these wide receivers, and we know they have playmakers. So I don't mind getting to some Caleb, and I think he's kind of getting overlooked in this situation. On to DraftKings. Quickly, I'll just touch on Cooper Rush, because we talked about every other one. I'm fine if you want to go some Cooper Rush. It's a tougher matchup versus the Giants than versus the Cowboys. So that is the one negative. But look, he put up a 20 and an 18. So he's obviously serviceable enough. And at 4,800 on DraftKings, you got to consider him. I don't like him so much on FanDuel where he's more expensive, but 4,800 and 4,500 for those two quarterbacks in the fastest game of the week on DraftKings, I think you need to consider, especially going low owned. Also, Caleb, 5,300. He has the highest rushing upside of any of these QBs, and it's not like the outlook for any of these QBs are very good. So I think Caleb is an interesting one. And I am more likely to pay down on DraftKings at quarterback than I would be on FanDuel, just because it's such a wider margin between the bottom and top areas. Quarterback as a whole is kind of tough for this Thanksgiving slate. All right, let's get over to the running back spot. So highest owned, Rico Dowdle, 6,100, 55% owned. I think he's in a very interesting spot versus this Giants team that's been giving it up. 140 rush yards per game over the last 4 with 1.3 touchdowns. He got 22 touches last week in a game that they won versus the Commanders, who have been a solid defense. If he gets 22 touches versus the Giants, you can expect a solid score. Now, the worry here is that he has kind of bounced around with how many touches he's got all season long. If those touches come back to him, it's a very interesting spot at a depressed salary point for the volume that he could get. So absolutely interested. David Montgomery, 7,600, 54% owned, 49 game total here. He's obviously in a very interesting spot. The Lions are going to run the ball and keep running the ball. And then when they've beat the Bears over the head by running the ball, they're going to do it some more. So I think all of the Lions running backs need to be considered on this 3-game slate. One thing that I would say, though, is that David Montgomery did get banged up last week. He says he's good to go and he's going to play, but if they get out to the lead, is Coach Campbell really going to throw him back out there when they have a solid lead and then they can just, lean on Gibbs or Reynolds, or one of their other backs? It's just, I think that there's a lot of ways he can go. And with him being banged up, it does worry me a little bit about how many carries he's going to get. I mean, he got pulled in the Colts game and didn't come back out. So, I mean, is the volume going to be there? The other thing is that earlier in the season, we did see him get banged up. And the couple games after that, we only saw him getting 9 targets a game or so. So I think just the carry volume is a little concerning, but it is a very good spot versus the Bears. They're allowing 135 yards on the ground over the last 4 and a touchdown per game. You're definitely going to want one of those Lions running backs, in my opinion. Josh Jacobs, 7,800 versus the Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins have been very stout versus the run lately. 61 yards a game. However, they are allowing 50 yards receiving. That may help Jacobs. He hasn't been involved in the passing game a ton, but he does get a target here or there. But on the ground is really where he's done his work, and it's kind of a tough matchup here. They haven't let a touchdown to the running back in the last 4, but on the season they are at 0.9 touchdowns per game allowed. So they have allowed plenty of touchdowns before those last 4 to the running back. Just been extremely stout lately. I'm fine with a little bit of Jacobs, but he's definitely not going to be one of my main spots. Tyrone Tracy, 6,500, 27% owned. I love me some Tyrone Tracy in this spot. He didn't get the touches we really wanted last week, but he still had 13, got involved in the passing game a little bit, and we know that there's giant upside with Tracy. He's had, 2 20-plus point games. Can he have a third versus the Cowboys? I think probably. Cowboys are 29th this season versus the running back, 23rd over the last 4. Allowing over 100 yards a game, 1.7 touchdowns per game. I think there's a lot of factors here to make Tracy interesting to play. And then my 2 favorite running backs by far are Jahmyr Gibbs and Devon Achane. So Jahmyr Gibbs, look, he can break it from anywhere. The other thing is if they are at all limiting Montgomery, Gibbs is getting the additional work. He had 21 carries last game once Montgomery was banged up a little bit. In other games that he was banged up, those carries went up. So I am absolutely interested in some Jahmyr Gibbs. I think there's a chance of him getting extra carries. And if he's the low owned of these 2 running backs, I'm probably going to go hard on Gibbs. I think it's a very, very interesting spot. Now, it is a divisional game. They tend to stay closer than most. So, maybe he is involved in the passing game a little later into this game than he has been lately. But it's a very interesting spot. And him and Achane are the most electric running backs on this slate and going the lower owned, which is wild to me. Which brings up Devon Achane. Now, regardless if he Achane, just the upside he has with Tua is just unreal. Now, we've seen 28, 24, 26. We saw those games last year of like 40 points. He has that kind of upside. We haven't seen it this year, but we have seen him consistently getting a lot of work. And with Tua, I've said it over and over and over again, he is so involved in the passing game that he has such a high floor. I absolutely love Achane this week. And I think this week, or this Thursday, there are very few guys that could put up, say, 30 fantasy points. And I think he is one of them. And Gibbs is as well. And I think for that reason, I really want to prioritize getting one of them into lineups, because if we get a 30 burger on Thanksgiving, like, you're going to have it. So moving over to DraftKings running back, we got Tyrone Tracy, 5,800, 54%. I love the spot. Rico Dowdle, 5,500, 43%. Gibbs is 53% owned, 7,500. Obviously love those. Devon Achane, 20% owned, 7,700 is just disrespectful in my opinion. He should be way higher owned, and I'd be hitting this one hard. What is interesting is that on DraftKings, Montgomery is $1K cheaper and going way less owned. I think that's a spot where, maybe I would lean into Montgomery a little bit more, just because if he gets that role that he's had all season, 6,500, it starts to look very, very interesting. And best matchup is Dowdle, Montgomery, with Achane right there with those guys. Getting over to the wide receiver spot, we got CeeDee Lamb, 45% owned, Rome Odunze at 35% owned, and Jameson Williams at 34% owned. CeeDee Lamb has obviously had the target volume with Cooper Rush, 12 targets in both. The issue here is the yardage is a little capped. He doesn't have that, 150 plus yardage ceiling. Also, multiple touchdowns is just going to be very hard for him, and you're paying up to get that. And really, when it comes down to it, the Giants got to focus just stopping CeeDee, and then, the entire game will be a little bit easier for them. I do like CeeDee. I am fine playing him, but if I am paying up, I would rather pay up for one of the running backs than one of these wide receivers. And that's my only issue here, that I would rather pivot to some of the cheaper WRs. Like Rome Odunze, new OC, 10 targets in both games. Now, that catch rate has been real low, but the target volume's going there. And at 5,500, I think you got to be interested versus a defense that is 27th versus wide receiver on the year, allowing 187 yards and 0.5 touchdowns per game. I think Odunze, DJ Moore, even Keenan Allen are interesting. Keenan had 15 targets last week, 8 the week before. This new OC is definitely making it much better for the wide receivers. 7 targets last game for Moore, 7 the week before. I think Bears wide receivers are a very interesting point this Thanksgiving, and I don't mind having one of them at all. I like Rome. I like DJ. I like Keenan Allen. The one thing I have to say with Keenan is Keenan has to have this like 15 target type game to really break slates, and I mean that's just not likely. Not when you have 2 other guys like they do. So Keenan is by far my least favorite of the 3. I would rather DJ and Rome over them. Jameson Williams, the thing with him is he doesn't need many targets to really get it done. I mean, 6 targets, 4 for 124 and a tutty, 7 for 5 and 64. I don't mind some Williams. He just has that game-breaking ability that is at least interesting on this slate. I don't love him. I think as a whole, the Lions just aren't going to have to throw the ball that much. But at least we're most likely to see Jalen Johnson on Amon-Ra St. Brown. leaving the passive resistance in that receiving game to Williams or Sam Laporta. So there is some upside to Williams this week. Jaden Reed, 6,900. I'm fine taking some Reed here. The Miami defense has been very solid over the last back half stretch, though. One thing we need to watch, though, is this Romeo Doubs news. If Doubs is out, then all these Packers wide receivers start to look a lot more interesting and just have a higher target floor. Now, the targets have been the issue for Reed lately. 3, 2, 6, 3, 4. Like, you're not paying $6,900 for that target volume. And right now he's probably going a little over-owned. But he is one of the only guys that has a 30-burger on any slate this year. So for the upside, you at least have to consider him. Now some pivot action. Malik Neighbors hasn't done much since he got hurt or since he got the concussion, but the target volume has been there. 9, 10, 11, 13, 8. DeVito's going to throw his way nonstop. Absolutely interested in Neighbors in the fastest game of the week. So fine going there. DJ Moore we covered. $9K for Amon-Ra is a lot versus a very tough defense. I mean, he's one of the best receivers on the slate, but I just struggle to get there big time. Keenan, you just got to get too many targets there. I liked Dobbs earlier in the day. The issue is he is coming back from a concussion and we have a short week. So I think we can probably say he's going to be out, but, hard to totally say. So that's a wait and see approach, but I do have to say that Wicks starts to look a lot more interesting. When he gets his chance, he generally does well, and I would expect some targets to go his way. And at 5,400, you got to consider him. If Dobbs is out, you also need to consider guys like Bo Melton, who would take the Wicks role, or Reed, or Christian Watson. All those guys become, priced a little cheaper because there's just more targets going their way. On to DraftKings, we got DJ Moore, Malik Neighbors, and Reed as the 3 highest owned. We have covered them all, so we will move it on over to tight end. Highest owned tight end, Tucker Kraft, 21% owned, 5,500. He does have the best tight end matchup of the week, so I don't mind some Tucker. My issue is I think salary is going to be a bit hard to come by. There aren't really many guys that are the wide receiver 4 or 5, that I'm interested in this slate. So I'm probably going to end up paying down a little bit. And even though it's only $600 less, I'm thinking Theo Johnson at 4,900, Schoonmaker at 5K, or Komet at 5,200 is something I'd be willing to do. The thing with Komet, 10 targets and 3 under the new coordinator. We've seen huge games from him. And if the Bears are throwing the ball 40 times, he's going to get some targets and going super low owned. Just hard to count on because they have so many different weapons that they can go to. Schoonmaker, only 4 targets last week, but 10 and 6 the other games with Ferguson going out. So target volume is going to be there. It's a fast game. Very interested in that one. And then Theo Johnson is just quietly just keeps getting it done. I mean, not huge upside. 6 targets for 39 yards, 6 for 37, 6 for 51, 4 for 35. He has a decent floor now, and then if he gets in the end zone in one of the fastest games of the week, it becomes, kind of interesting here. So I don't mind going to some Theo. And Sam Laporta, I mean, he gets 6 targets a week, so you got to consider, but very, very hard for me to want to go there. Jake Ferguson's a long shot to play, so that's why we're not covering him, or why I'm talking about Schoonmaker there. Tight end on DraftKings. Jonnu Smith, 4,300, highest owned. Dude has been crushing it lately. 24 and 31 the last 2 weeks with 19 targets going his way. For that, you got to consider him a little bit. The one thing I would say is there is no way that Jonnu keeps getting these kind of targets and Tyreek Hill gets 5, 6 week in, week out. There's just no way that that continues. It is going to revert back to Hill sometime soon. Now, is it on Thanksgiving? It very well could be. And if that happens, then you're talking about a low-owned Tyreek, and you get leverage from a high-owned Jonnu Smith. But 2,900 for Theo, 36 for Komet, and 34 for Schoonmaker are all very interesting to me, and I think I'd be paying down just so I can get some more studs into my lineup. And best matchup, Tucker Kraft, Cole Komet. But, I mean, Komet, Johnson, Jonnu, all are right around average-ish matchups. Tucker is the only real plus one with Laporta and Ferguson, or Schoonmaker getting the rough spot there. So now on to defense. Dallas Cowboys highest owned versus the Giants. It's DeVito. We know that Cowboys defense can get after the quarterback with Parsons, and they can get some pick sixes with Diggs and whatnot. So I get why people are going there. I don't mind it. Dolphins 3,900 versus the Packers, but in Green Bay, I think is a very tough pill to swallow. However, it will be very cold, so maybe that helps defenses slightly. But I think Lions are interesting. Giants or Cowboys are interesting. I mean, you got backup quarterbacks in both situations, and they're not very expensive, so I like that. Bears versus Detroit, I'm just probably Xing out at this point. They're just too good to taking care of the ball. So I don't love that spot, but it is a divisional matchup and wild things happen, but it's in Detroit. So, defense, I mean, there's none that's like, oh, this is the one. I kind of like them all. Giants and Cowboys are interesting, but I do like taking a lot of Giants and Cowboys on my DFS lineups also. So for me, it's really going to be more of a price point thing this week than one defense I like a little bit more than others. But price accounted for, the Giants might be my favorite. And Lions, Dolphins are high owned on DK. Same thing, defense here also. That'll do it for us today, guys. Good luck. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you guys make some money. Hope you guys have a great time with your family. And I will see you later this week. Peace.